I'm Eric Parker. This morning on CT21, a state legislator resigns, accused of diverting more than $600,000 of CARES Act money into his own pocket. It was meant to help the people of West Haven, and now the arrest is resulting in calls for a better accounting of pandemic relief funds. State Senator Kevin Kelly joins us to share his take on what happened and what should happen going forward. And final approval of the Pfizer COVID vaccine could come this week for 5 to 11-year-olds, but parents have questions. Pediatrician Dr. Jody Terranova is here with answers. Plus, a new airline opens for business at TWEED-New Haven Airport this week, offering an array of nonstop flights to Florida. The airport's executive director, Sean Scanlon, is joining us to talk about the future of Connecticut's other airport. It's all this Sunday, October 31st. It's Halloween, and CT21 starts right now.
From Channel 3, this is Connecticut's most watched current affairs program, CT21, with Eric Parker. Sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
Good morning, and thank you for being with us. I'm Eric Parker. Hundreds of thousands of dollars meant to help the people of West Haven was used instead to feed a local legislator's gambling addiction. That's the accusation against the now former state legislator and West Haven city employee Michael DeMassa, arrested on a federal wire fraud charge on October 20th. That arrest prompted calls for an accounting of how all the CARES Act money has been and is being distributed and spent. State Senator Kevin Kelly is among those looking for clarity. He joins us this morning via Zoom. Senator Kelly, thank you for being with us. You've been outspoken about this. First of all, just your reaction to hearing this news that $600,000 could go missing.
Well, Eric, it's very disappointing on a number of fronts. First and foremost is it's a breach of the public trust. Taxpayers entrust government with their sacrifice, and that sacrifice needs to be respected. So there is an impact on the public trust. The other thing is here that these funds were given by the federal government to the state of Connecticut, and we were entrusted to deliver those funds to our towns and cities to make sure we help people in need, the most vulnerable during this pandemic, which was historic. And instead of using those funds to help people, find health care, find rental assistance, help them through this pandemic, the money was allegedly misappropriated somewhere else. And that was half of the funds that were allocated to the city of West Haven. And as a result, it's diminished that community. And so because of that, what we need to do is act swiftly and strong to restore that public trust. And we've called for an audit, and we need public hearings before the legislature because the governor's administration was responsible for the oversight of these funds, and that we need to make sure that there's protections in place so that the people who depend on these funds get what they deserve and they're entitled to. Just giving the power to the governor landed us here, and I think we can do better.
Now, the governor's budget director said OPM is investigating the Office of Policy and Management, and they will be bringing in an independent auditor to look through this. Is that good enough for you?
Well, I think we need to do more than that. We gave the executive all this power during the COVID pandemic. And I think what we need to do is get the legislature involved to oversee what's going on. After all, the legislature has the power of the purse. We need to know what the governor and his administration were doing with these funds. And I think it's only common sense to restore those checks and balances that is part of Civics 101. Anybody in grade school who listens understands and learns about civics, that our government is based on checks and balances. Well, that check and balance process is restored when the legislature is present in the process. And that's why we've called on a public hearing to bring the administration to the people and account for what's going on.
Senator Kelly, you're the Republican leader in the Senate. I want to play you a brief soundbite we have from Representative Matt Ritter, the Speaker of the House, a Democrat. Here's what he had to say when he was asked about this.
These are communities that need a lot of help, and that money could have gone to a lot of good places.
He went on in that soundbite, Senator Kelly, to say it appeared that this was an individual in distress who took it. That suggests that it's an isolated incident, that this was one bad apple, one bad actor. Do you agree with that assessment, that that this was obviously someone who, it's already come out that this was apparently going to feed a gambling addiction, so maybe it was just one bad actor who took advantage of the system?
Well, I agree with the speaker in the sense that these funds were to help vulnerable individuals and communities in distress. Absolutely. And that's why this is so important. However, we don't know that it's isolated to one individual. We don't know what the procedures and protocols were that were in place. Obviously, they were lax because this did happen and the FBI got involved. And whenever the FBI gets involved in your finances, it's not a good day. So we need to have the administration come to the legislature to make sure that these proper protocols and procedures are in place so that we make sure that the funds that were sacrificed and given to the state and trusted to the state reach those individuals in need. It's so important to protect the vulnerable. And that's what we're trying to do here. And that's why we're calling, not only for the audit, but also to bring the administration before the legislature with public hearings. I think that's the only way to bring transparency, sunlight, and safeguards to the system.
There was a release this past week from the Connecticut Parents Union, a decidedly liberal group that, I think in many matters before the legislature, it'd be pretty surprising if you agreed with them on a lot of those topics just fundamentally. But they came out and said the same thing. They want a full investigation and an audit of all the money because they think it was money that could have benefited a lot of programs that they cared about. So as you've talked to your colleagues in the legislature, is this sort of a bipartisan request, or do you feel like you're fighting an uphill battle here?
Well, I think it transcends being a Democrat and Republican. It's why you'll have people from all across the spectrum, and it's more than just Republicans in the legislature asking this. It's, you have the Connecticut Parents Union also asking for this, because what it's about is protecting funds for people in need. And I think we all want that. And they're not, protecting those funds isn't a Democrat or Republican initiative. It's a common sense initiative. It's what people expect government to do. And that's why we've just asked for these common sense requests in audit, and also the governor and his administration to come before the legislature, who are the people's representatives, to make sure that these safeguards are in place, to make sure that it is isolated to just one incident. But in the absence of that transparency, I think we're going to, always have cast doubt and distrust on what's going on.
What's the scope that you'd like to see? Are you looking to look into all the CARES Act money that's gone out there? Do you start in West Haven and then expand if necessary? What would you like to see done? We have about a minute left, Senator.
Yes, I'd like to see, an audit, obviously, of what's going on in West Haven, but also to expand that. We sent a letter with a list of questions to the OPM secretary. We've asked for a public hearing before the Appropriations Committee. Come, let's talk about things, but let's also expand this. Let's make sure that there are protocols in place and that this isn't happening anywhere else. And if everybody of all the towns across the state of Connecticut have done right with this money, it should be easy to account for. It's something that just happened in the past, year, 18 months. It's not like we're asking for 10-year accounting. It's something that just happened, and we think it's only reasonable. It's what people expect us to do with regards to their money and the tax dollars that government gets.
Well, certainly there's a difference of opinion on exactly how to go forward, but everyone agrees I think $600 grand is a lot of money. Senator Kevin Kelly, we appreciate you being with us, and we'll be following what happens at the legislature with this going forward. Thank you. Coming up later in our program, a new airline takes flight in Connecticut on Wednesday, and it could be the start of something much bigger. But next, an FDA panel last week announced it is recommending the Pfizer vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds. By the end of this week, the final sign-off could happen. Pediatrician Dr. Jody Terranova is here to talk about what parents should know as they decide what to do about the vaccine and their kids. We'll be right back.